Good evening, Razorback fans. Welcome to the one, the only Hog Talk podcast, live from the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios, part of the Believe and Buzz Radio Network. You can hear us on all podcast platforms, as well as Buzz to 106.7 in Central Arkansas. So please like, rate, and review our podcast. All live shows are presented to you by Arkansas Brewing Company in downtown Ozark. I am Porter Hayes. Alongside me is Adam Hall, and we're also brought to you by Bet Online. It's your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchups reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get on the action. Remember to use the promo code BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And Adam, I don't know what's more exciting, that it's game week or we actually were below 100 degrees today and it wasn't the Devil's Front Porch.
Yeah, I'm at this moment in time, I'm going to take the cooler temperatures, but I know this weekend it's going to creep back up. So I don't know. It's game week, so that actually just overtakes everything. You kind of overlook how miserable it's been outside.
Exactly. Had a full slate of Friday night football finally. I don't understand the whole week zero stuff, and they even do it in college football as well, week zero. But full Friday night slate this past weekend. I do want to ask you, getting into the high school right quick, what happened? I don't know the team, don't follow that much, but I was very, very surprised to see Southside get the win over Northside.
Southside broke their 7-game losing streak to Northside. That game was Northside's got a young team. They got a sophomore, I believe, at quarterback, or no, mostly their secondary sophomores. But they let the game get away from them. It's just young talent that missed some spots. I know Southside's running back also rushed for like 221 yards on 18 carries.
Ooh.
So that was brutal for him. At one point, Northside was down, I think, 2 or 3 touchdowns in the third quarter and then clawed their way back and just couldn't finish the game. So, I hate always saying, the next year or two for some teams, but that's kind of what it looks like for Northside with having such a young team.
Yeah. And Ozark, they got to win over Clarksville. Big game this week. It's our big game, since we're no longer in the same conference with Boonville, but it's Boonville hate week for us. But finally getting into it, 12 p.m. kickoff. They moved the kickoff back. I don't get your take on it, here in a second, but it will be a noon kickoff this Saturday against Western Carolina in Little Rock. And what did you think when they announced that they would move it back?
I understand it. Noon, temperatures are starting to rise or have been starting to rise versus 3 o'clock when you're at close to the hottest point of the day. I personally, don't think it really is going to affect anything other than travel plans for some folks.
Yeah. So,
I read earlier that it's going to interfere with KJ's nap schedule. Because he's usually taking a nap or supposed to around that point. But it is what it is. You roll with it. I would kind of, for the first game, you know what? We don't have to wait around very long. Let's wake up and get it out of the way.
Well, I was thinking too, it's an opponent against Western Carolina. And we were talking last week about cramps and concussions and injuries, meaningless. If you can up the kickoff and say, look, we hope the starters are out by halftime.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be 2 o'clock. Roundabout way 2:30. So it's going to be hot either way. But I'm looking at it, just get in there, get your guys some reps, put this thing away at halftime and get them out of there. Get your twos in there, get your depth going, and it really wouldn't matter. I understand about the fans and that game in Little Rock, but you got to look at the grand scheme of the game. You're playing a meaningless game 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon after these games are 4 hours long, and you're again outdoors. So I think it was kind of a smart move, to really take advantage of that. But we all know how it is when it gets hot, it gets hot.
It does. And I'd rather them move the game up like they did versus like we saw a lot of high schools moving games to 8 o'clock for when the sun's about to go down. Because I know that Northside game didn't end till 11 o'clock probably sometime. And I'm sorry, that's past my bedtime. So that was just a little bit too much. So, especially the first game, let's just go and get it out of the way instead of dragging around all day waiting for it. I like noon better than I like 11 a.m.s, even though it's only an hour difference.
And we got to see, the depth chart. We're looking at the official first week depth chart here and taking a look at it. What was there anything that really kind of stood out to you? I like seeing Tesla on there. Of course, we knew Andrew Armstrong, being the number one guy, Isaiah Satania. There's really nothing really that stands out to me on this list when you're looking at, either or, but man, there's a lot of senior leadership. There's a lot of, veteran guys on this team, and that's something you really like to see.
Yeah, I was looking through it, and there was a couple of spots where I guess I was shocked just to see it. I mean, it's always crazy to me. Well, it's not really crazy, but seeing like Luke Haas being, named starting tight end. I mean, he got a lot of praise and a lot of hype in the preseason and camp and whatnot, but you never know how that's going to relate to the first depth chart. So, having him and Sherman, listed as the first two tight ends, I was kind of shocked. I've kind of figured, I know Nathan Bax, I guess, has gone in and out of some injuries here and there during camp, but I like seeing it. I like seeing the young guys mixed in with the older guys. It shows that the talent that they've brought in, is ready to play in some positions.
Yeah, and then you look at the defensive side of the ball, just this team, I know they're chomping at the bit because, I want to say that there's been a lot of, of course, talk about the offense compared to the defense coming into this offseason. I think the defense is wanting to come out and make a name for themselves and kind of has that not chip on their shoulder, but hey, look, this isn't just KJ and Rocket show. This isn't the wide receivers. We got a stout defense and, running underneath a new coordinator and a new set. I'm really excited to see, one, how much they try to blitz, how much they really try to show, this week with their mixtures and how much they go 4 front, 3 front, getting, and a lot of thing is watching the rotations, on the line and the linebackers, how often they rotate. And I think heat will come into play too. But I think that's where you're going to build your depth.
Oh, yeah. And I've been excited for Landon Jackson since he stepped on the field for Arkansas when he first got here. I know injuries have gotten him and whatever else, but I think that this is going to be a breakout year for him. I think our defensive line as a whole is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I just look at those guys and I see multiple NFL draft picks coming out of that defensive line.
Well, when your defensive ends 6'7", 281 and 6'4", 281, that's some big boys coming off the edge.
Oh yeah. Because I was looking at that earlier too, and that 280 is just baffling. But at the same time, when you look at his build, it's just, that's a freak show right there.
And I know it looks a little different, at being 6'7" and 280 opposed to, you look at Jeff Coat, 6'4", 281. There's a bit of difference there, but man, it's just it's good to see size. It's good to see SEC size on this team, and at the 2 deep. You're seeing multiple guys that might be playing out of pocket or out of position, but it's going to take a lot of pressure off the first teams to feel like they have to do everything. It was almost like what we were talking about. We talked to Coach Neighbors about the women's basketball team and, people gambling and people trying to make a play because the guy behind them, they didn't think, could, have the talent to do it. And sometimes that could get you tripped up. Now, guy, on your defense and offense, you're running 2 deep. That's going to bode well.
Yeah, and I'm looking at, and then back over to the secondary. I'm looking at Singletary coming in, redshirt freshman transfer from Georgia. I expect a lot out of him. I'm not trying to put too much into that, but I think he's got a lot of untapped talent that is going to benefit this secondary for a few years.
I really like the fact that, Sam Pittman was talking about the ors or theys. He was talking about they could both be ones. He has faith and he trusts these guys. And I think that's going to be good, especially with, Chris Paul. He's coming into this, season hobbling a little bit, getting over the injury. So having a guy, Jaheim Thomas, come in behind him that he trusts to come in and back Paul up, that's going to be huge too. You're talking, I was talking about just a second ago. You've got a guy that's, not 100% coming in this game. He knows he's got somebody behind him that can take his spot. That's going to be huge.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, one thing that I think is good for, and I think we're going to see this out of Pooh, is, who he's learned from the last few years. So I think he can be that vocal leader on the defensive side. But also, I think it's going to be different because we don't necessarily have I don't know his 40 time, but we don't have Drew Sanders' speed at linebacker.
Yeah.
I don't think, his speed was crazy as it was. But I think it's going to be a different look and a different element that's not necessarily going to be worse by any means. I know we talked about it the other day on, maybe who's going to have like more sacks or who's going to. I think our defensive front is, that's going to be a big improvement to take some of the pressure off the linebackers from having to make those backfield tackles.
Well, that's we're talking about that forefront. When your linebackers and your safeties are the ones getting all the sacks, that's not a good look. It looks good. Oh, we have the most sacks more than anybody, but the fact that you're not having to rely on Drew Sanders going out there and making 80, 90, 100 tackles and really getting burnt out. You have a lot of depth in that line. And again, these first 3 weeks are going to be crucial to see how much pressure they can get on the quarterback. And I think, not so much against Western Carolina, but I think next week against Kent State, you're really going to see the dogs getting let loose because you also got to know that if you are not able to get pressure against a Kent State or a BYU, it's going to be hard getting pressure when you start up playing SEC play.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I was going through Western Carolina because I don't think anybody will fault me in not knowing, much about their team. Yeah. But, I'm looking through their depth chart, or actually I haven't even seen it, just their roster in general. And I mean, they've got some size on their offensive line, but, there's just not a lot, I guess, that stands out on paper, which is no knock against those players. It's just, one thing I was looking at too was the heights of their secondary when I was going through their depth chart or their roster. And I think they have two safeties that are 6'2", and everybody else on the secondary is 5'11" and under.
Ooh.
And we're looking at having multiple guys that are 6'4" to 6'7" that are going to be on the field at the same time and wide out tight ends. So, you look at that and it could be a long day for their secondary. Yeah.
And that's because especially with, the receiving core and all the questions around the receiving core, what you're getting with the running backs and you want to get everybody in a rhythm. Game time rhythm, and that's what this is going to be. A lot of this, get them. You need them guys out by halftime. Make sure you get them well rested. Because you got Kent State up next the very next week, but also with that receiving core, when they're talking about you got 5, 6, 7 guys, maybe 9 guys that can all produce. Getting those guys in the slots and moving people around, getting different matchups and. Then you get to see, all right, who's my go-to guy on third down? Who's the one that we could take a shot at in a 50-50 ball? Because, again, other than Burks, we've not really seen a guy that you could throw the ball up to and really get that 50-50 ball. And you talking about extending drives and, you're having those third down woes, you have a guy, even if it's just one of the guys, if it's Armstrong, or Tesla, anybody that can come up and get you a third down, you have confidence, and KJ can get a confidence. And because again, on third down, what is the first thing that any team facing Arkansas is going to think on third down? It's either KJ or Rocket. Depending, if it's short distance. Now, mix it up. They could still throw it to Haas or Tesla Armstrong. You never know who they're going to give the ball to.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing we talked about too is seeing. I mean, Arkansas's usually had tight ends that could catch. But I think now, with those smaller short yardage. I mean, we could see some bigger packages that one tight end may be blocking, one's going out on a route, or whatever the case may be. So it's going to be some different looks, but I think they're going to use the next, I would say 2 games, obviously, but we may see some matchups in this game or lineups with the 1s and the 2s that maybe it didn't work as they thought it would with Western Carolina. So they may mix it up again come week 2 with Kent State. Maybe this wide receiver works better with KJ and this one does with Griswell. So they, mix that up a little bit. But that's what the next 2 weeks are for. So,
yeah. And again, then moving that game time. I mean, that kind of, I understand. But then again, that could, you're talking about the little tidbit about KJ's nap. I mean, that could put a little tweak in how they do these, bringing in Jacoby, and do we try to put some of the ones in with him, so I like your point there, what you're saying about even trying to get Jacoby in there with some of the ones and getting him in there. And, but I can't get, but looking at this depth chart and seeing all the depth at receiver, and you're like, okay, these are good. These guys can all catch the ball. These guys can all have SEC type talent and speed. I can't wait to see Satania break one open. I can't wait to really see some of these guys just get out in the open and really see that flash, because again, since, Wright and Jarius Wright and days, and Joe Adam days, we've seen Burks be able to go up and get it. I can't wait to see where we got 2 receivers, and just have like one of them, the St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf. One of them, we're just dropping back and just throwing the ball.
Yeah. I mean, you want obviously to have that talent. I think Satania, I am waiting for him to just have that breakout moment, whether it's this weekend in Little Rock. I'd love for it to be in Fayetteville, just since he's a hometown kid. But whether it's special teams return or so, I'm just waiting. I've been waiting for his moment since he got to Arkansas.
Yeah, and that's one thing we haven't really touched on is, who's going to be that return guy? Who are they going to put back there, really can be that burner? But again, with how the rules have changed, you really don't want to put your best guy back there returning, because it's all for naught anyway. But it's just, this is the most anticipated team, I think. I mean, there's a lot of hype around it, and I know we always get hyped every year thinking, okay, this team's going to be different. But I really just feel something with just everything we're seeing out of this team, from on the field, off the field, the motivation, maybe it's that fresh, those coaches coming in and getting a fresh look at these players. And again, there's competitiveness, there's competition, there's fights, there's people battling for positions. And you see those oars, they're still battling. It's like, hey, this guy's on the depth chart right here at this left receiver or the slot, but there's an oar beside there. So they're still battling for that position. So again, this is also going to be an audition for those. It's like a preseason game almost. Those guys not being the last of that. They're trying to be that number 1 next week.
And I think that's what we're seeing with, the likes of the portal, and then just bringing in this younger talent that is ready to play college football straight out of high school. Is, I think we've had to settle in some positions in the past, even the recent past. And I think now it's getting to that point that there's no more settling in a lot of these spots. It's either you're going to be that guy or you're not going to be.
Well, and you got 2 guys, Andrew Armstrong and Isaac Tesla. You talking about chips. You look where they come from, Texas A&M Commerce, and then Hillsdale College. So now they are if you're looking from the outside in, if you're not an Arkansas guy and you're looking at this depth chart, which tomorrow we'll have on Brandon Marcello of 247 Sports at 7:00 tomorrow, he broke out his top 30 teams, and Arkansas didn't make the cut. So it leads into this topic. If you're outside looking in and you're looking at your 2 go-to guys, one's from Hillsdale College and one's Texas A&M Commerce. And if you're a national guy, you're not really deep diving into each team. I mean, that's where some of these people always say, well, they don't show Arkansas love. Well, I mean, try covering 119 teams or how many ever Power 5 teams there are and really deep dive. So these national guys are looking at this, they're like, man, 2 of their starting wide receivers are D2 guys coming up. So we've seen how that's kind of been a knock on Arkansas in the past with these portal guys. I think that's a little of this hesitancy on why some people are not ready to rank Arkansas yet. And we all know until Arkansas proves otherwise, it's a bit of a curse if you get ranked.
Yeah, I think we've obviously and probably all agree that, the last few seasons, I guess 2020 and last year most notably, or maybe it was 2021 and 22, I think we got ranked too high too quickly, and that came back to bite us. So, I like playing from the outside, looking in on it, make some people question what we have on the roster. There's a lot of uncertainties on the outside and even for, us fans. But these guys, I think, are going to come out with something to prove that they belong in the SEC.
And I see what you're getting at, like, well, they ranked them too high. But again, I mean, at that moment, they might have looked like the 21st ranked team. But we can't also penalize Arkansas because when they fall down, they're playing LSU, they're playing Alabama, they're playing Texas, they're playing top 5, 10 teams. And, that's what I've always – and I know it would be hard to tell because you'd really, really have to deep dive and do analytics. But, say you're the 21st ranked team and you get beat by Bama, you're automatically falling out of the top 25. And I don't think that's a fair point because – well, just because you got beat by second-ranked Alabama or seventh-ranked Texas A&M, you're still better than 16 through 20. But because you have that loss, you'll notice it. And I know it's, again, we're talking about deep diving in all these teams. But I've always noticed that when it comes to the rankings of Arkansas gets ranked 24th, well, damn it, they got to play first-ranked Texas A&M next week. They get beat by 2 touchdowns, and they drop out of the rankings. I think in a way that's a bit unfair because they're still a top 25 team. They just, had to go up against the, look at the volleyball team. They're ranked 21st. They move up in the rankings and they got to play the number 1 team in the country Wednesday and Thursday. And that was because Wisconsin was ranked number 2 and the number 1 team got beat. So, I mean, again, it's awesome to move up, but now you got
well, and our schedule's never going to be in our favor in that aspect. But also, it's one of those until we prove otherwise, that's going to keep happening to Arkansas.
Well, and until put Arkansas on the top 25. I mean,
but say we crept up at that number 24, 23 spot, and then we had an A&M or somebody. I mean, it's going to take us beating that, top 10 team for them to finally be like, okay, we got to stop dropping them after a tough loss or whatever, Again, so it went, but winning is also what fixes a lot of those things, those issues.
Winning and say, like let's go to the LSU, Texas A&M. You say you play LSU close, you lose by 4, but then in beating A&M by 10, 7 points. I don't think that should affect your ranking because you played one of the top teams in the country to 3-5 points, and then you turn around and beat. I think that should move you up because you're proving that you're a better team than people ahead of you. And that's where that strength of schedule comes in, but also in the fact of you can't play a hard-fought LSU team and then get blown out by Texas A&M, and then it starts that downhill trajectory that we've seen in years past. You got to stay on point. I think that's going to be the biggest difference we're going to see this year. We're going to see, because more depth, you're going to see those games. If they can ride out that 4-game gauntlet, split it, or just not get absolutely embarrassed in one of those games, I'm still sticking with my 9-game prediction.
Yeah, I think like with my 8-4, your 9-3, those games right immediately after those potential losses are going to be huge factors into not only rankings but the overall finals wins-loss record.
Yeah. So, well, and then it's going to start getting more and more, we're talking about this respect thing. And I think that's something that's just thrown around. Like, when's Arkansas going to get respect? Well, honestly, let's look at it. Let's go back 10 years. I mean, over the last 10 years, have they shown consistently that they're a program that deserves to be ranked consistently? A team can have a good year here and there, but consistently. And yes, if you want to talk about the good, we got to throw in the bad. I mean, of course, with John Ellen and Chad Morris, but consistently, this is a program that, I mean, again, just with their schedule and what conference and division they play in, it's hard. Not to say they're not a top 25 program, but until you can start hanging with these teams and really, like Alabama game, when you had the chance to beat them, you should have took advantage of that. You've never beaten them under Saban, so that was like your gift. Now, again, you could possibly, but I'm telling you, I'm one of them. Look, if Alabama doesn't win it all this year, then I will start to say, okay, maybe the dynasty's over. But I've just seen too many. I've seen Clemson battle Alabama too many years, 4 years in a row. In the college football playoff finals and they're in the semifinals, you always doubt them and they come back. They might not win, but they're always right back there. So, but I also think too, I was talking to Joe Deloney, one of our Believe guys. He was talking about Bama, and I think a lot of it's the bandwagon. They want to doubt them, and then it's this narrative of, all right, we're going to jump back on the Bama bandwagon and say, oh, look, we said back in September that they were going to be the best team in the country. But until they say they missed the playoffs this year, I might be ready to say that the dynasty's over, but you can't ever not bet on a Nick Saban Alabama team.
And that's why I won't until they show me otherwise. So, I've seen some second place in the West predictions. I've seen some 8-4 predictions for Alabama, and there's just no way in hell that I could believe that to happen. I've heard the talk of Nick Saban doesn't have any one position coach that's the number one coach in that position. It's like the first time in his career at Alabama, and I'm just kind of like, so what? I mean, they still have Nick Saban as the coach. He still is the one handpicking his assistants. So until he shows me that it's time to, move on from the Alabama dynasty, it is what it is for me.
Well, and I will say this, name any other coach that could go through the roster changes in his tenure and still be on top year after year after year after year. I don't see anyone who can do it. I mean, they've tried. I mean, I'll throw my team in there. Look at Clemson ever since Venables and Elliott left. They've been in the talk, but they have not been the same elite team since they lost Venables and Tony Elliott. Now let's see what they do now that they got the guy from TCU. But they also don't have Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence for 8 years. I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that helps too. But when you look at your coordinators and stuff, I mean, Saban's had guys come and go, and they've stayed at the top. I mean, I want to see what Georgia does. Georgia does not have a quarterback. Are they going to be the new kind of old school Bama? Not really have an elite quarterback, but they have such good defense and skill players, they make them look better.
I mean, Kirby Smart basically has the blueprint in front of him with being at Alabama previously to make himself. I'm never going to put him up on the same level as, Saban, but he has the chance to do at least half of what Saban has done at Alabama at Georgia.
Yeah, I'm not willing to put anybody up on Saban's level until they, you do when you're up there with the likes of Bear Bryant and Saban, you do something like Bill Belichick's done with Tom Brady. You build a real dynasty. Like a dynasty nowadays is, oh, well, look what they've won 2 and 4 years. This is a dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because elite program, yes, but calling somebody a dynasty, I want 3 to 4 championships in a 10-year period, because I'm looking at the when I say dynasty, it's over a decade, like the 2010s and the 2020s. When you get to that level of a dynasty, it's hard to say it if yes. Now LSU, or not LSU, but Georgia, say they went back to back and they don't make it this year, but then win it next year. Now we can kind of start saying, okay, this is getting to the point where you could call them a dynasty because they've always been there. So, but we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to carry on the conversation after the break. Here's a word from our sponsors.
Attention DIYers and home improvement enthusiasts. Are you searching for the right tools and the supplies to tackle your next project? Look no further than Mentor's Hardware Store. With locations in Ozark, Alma, and Clarksville, our vast selection of hardware and building materials is sure to have everything you need, whether you're fixing a leaky faucet or building a new deck. Plus, our knowledgeable staff is always on hand to offer expert advice and guidance. And with our competitive prices and convenient online ordering, Mentor's Hardware Store is your one-stop shop for all your DIY needs. Visit us today and let's build something amazing together. Are you in need of legal representation? Look no further than the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson. As the oldest law firm in the River Valley, we have been serving our clients for over 100 years, with locations in Ozark, Fort Smith, and Springfield. Our experienced team of attorneys provide expert guidance and advocacy in a wide range of legal areas, including personal injury, family law, criminal defense, and more. Trust in our history and experience to get the results you deserve. Contact the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson today at 479-782-8813. That's 479-782-8813. Are you looking for a place to grab a cold drink and some delicious food? Look no further than Arkansas Brewing Company. Located at 201 South First Street in beautiful downtown Ozark, our establishment offers a wide selection of craft beers and tasty eats. But what sets us apart is our welcoming atmosphere and friendly staff. At Arkansas Brewing Company, you'll always feel like part of the family. So visit Destiny and Christopher Brockett and staff today and see for yourself what makes us the go-to spot for locals and visitors alike. Arkansas Brewing Company, come for the drinks and stay for the friends. Searching for premium brewery products that will take your daily routine to the next level? Look no further than Sterling Soap Company. Our handmade soaps, aftershaves, and balms are made with only the finest ingredients that give you the ultimate grooming experience. With a variety of scents to choose from, there's something for everyone. Plus, our products are crafted in small batches to ensure the highest level of quality. So why wait? Visit www.sterlingsoap.com or visit our retail store at 16 West Walnut Street in Paris, Arkansas. Shop our collection and discover the difference for yourself. Upgrade your grooming routine with Sterling Soap Company.
And I want to welcome you back to the Hog Talk podcast. And before the break, you were talking about, dynasties and what we consider a dynasty. And we didn't get, your take. I kind of cut you off on accident there. Go to the commercial break. But what do you consider, like, when you think of, we can go pro, college. And what is your take on what you break down as a dynasty?
I think that term's thrown around a little bit too much. I think of dynasties, it's hard not to just revert to like basketball dynasties or NFL dynasties with Bill Belichick and the Patriots. I do look at, winning. I get your 10-year span. I think you need to be maybe more in the 3 to 4 national titles in that 10-year span. But it's so hard in a decade to actually be able to do that, which, is why the way it is what it is. It's a dynasty. I think that Georgia has the chance, especially with being able to win back-to-back, that, if they put another one together in the next few years, Kirby Smart is definitely going to be up there with, Georgia being talked about as another SEC dynasty, national dynasty, whatever you want to call it. But I'm just not ready to back off that, Nick Saban's on the down and out.
Yeah. And when I look at a dynasty, it's, that's the highest of the high when I write a program. So you got to separate yourself. There's been plenty of teams that's won it 2 every other year, they got 2 national championships in a span of 4 like Clemson and Ohio State's done it before. But when you're looking at dynasty, I want to see consistency. And I wouldn't even put the Clemson run as a dynasty because they got 2 out of that long of a run. And I go back to 2015, 2015 to 2020, you were in 4 championship games and you won 2 of them. Now, if you'd have won a third one, then, or if you wouldn't in that semifinal just got manhandled by Bama, I'm not ready to call it a dynasty. I think, again, you got to separate yourself. And what have you done differently and put yourself on? I mean, you want to say it, Alabama's level.
Mm-hmm.
If Clemson would have won all three in that same span of time, then I would have been like, okay, this was the dynasty after Bama. But, to be a dynasty, you got to be on top of the rock, on top of that hill a little bit longer, and instead of getting knocked down every other year.
Yeah, I mean, on the, not ACC fan, not Clemson fan, but I was on that verge of, is Clemson the next? And then they just, faltered and fell. And they didn't even fall that far necessarily. It's just they weren't at that same level, but they were right there on the cusp. I'll say that they were at an elite level, yes, but they just were not. It just fell too far off from where they were at. Now, I think that also takes, you take a look at the coaching changes, the personnel changes that, Nick Saban reloads, whether it's coaches or players. And you haven't seen that with Dabo after, some of the coordinators and position coaches that he's lost, and players too. So, it's kind of like in Kirby's court on, when you lose guys, are you reloading, mm-hmm, or are you going to struggle to find coaches or players to fill the void?
And if you want to, we're talking about like this dynasty talk, and they're above Clemson in the essence of where I'm going with this, because they've won back-to-back. Mm-hmm. But to me, Georgia's the next new Clemson, because mm-hmm, you look at the East, look at the schedule they've played. They've played an ACC-esque schedule, just like Clemson was able to run through, get lucky with losing some games and still make it to and win the college football playoff championship. Now this is a pivotal year when we're ready to talk about, is Georgia a dynasty, because of what they do. They make it to the college football playoff, lose it on a whim, and then the next year make it and win it. Then I'll be ready to say that they're at that level, of being so-called dynasty.
Yeah, and something to look at next season too, when we're in this talk, is with no more divisions, yes, and next year we're going to see Alabama and Georgia in the regular season. Mm-hmm. That right there, I mean, luckily for them, the college football playoff's gone to 12 teams. So we're going to see, more than 2 SEC teams in that.
Yeah.
But, if that wasn't the case, I mean, that game would tremendously hurt the loser if there weren't more teams in the CFP.
Oh, yeah. And why do you think, in a sense, they've kind of done that? Why do you think, and this is, we're going to break it down, money, because, Alabama is in the West, so they've had to play a lot of, when Ole Miss was at their peak, Mississippi State when they were at their peak. You look at the East, not too many teams were pumping up. Now we're starting to see a surge. When Kentucky had their run with Benny Snell, Florida was starting to bounce back. Now they're kind of back down again. But you look at Tennessee and the surgence of Tennessee. South Carolina is a salty program. We're going to start seeing more balance to where you're going to see a lot more better matchups, because one, they're going to the 12-team playoff. And I'm telling you, we could see minimum 4 teams from the SEC when they go to this new format.
Yeah, it's going to be one of, before it was fighting for or arguing for the reason to have 2 SEC teams in the Final Four. Now I think it's going to be, okay, how can we not have potentially 5 of the 12 teams in this playoff? And that's just, when you come down to the strength of schedule and the quality of teams, that's just how it is. But kind of like we've touched on too, an 8-4 season, like say for Arkansas, or 9-3, that could still put them, in 4th or 5th mm-hmm. in this division. So it's going to be, I guess I'm waiting for whenever it finally rolls out, the college football rankings and whatnot, to start seeing where everything fell like it used to at the BCS days, with all the movement and whatnot.
Well, and with the, the new conference structures, and that's ever changing. We could see, this might end up being a thing where there's 3 super conferences, and the top 4 from each conference battle it out because if you think about, the Pac-12's gone, mm-hmm. It's Big Ten. It's pretty much going to be, we'll see what the Big 12 does, but it's pretty much going to be Big Ten, ACC, and the SEC So the Big 12 better start stacking their teams up, or they're going to be like the Power Five that might get in one of their teams, because it could be 3 or 4 teams from Pac-12 or ACC and Big 10, and then we're going to let the Big 12 team trickle in.
Yeah. The Pac-12, who knows what's going to happen with them. I kind of thought when everything shifted that there was only 4 teams left, that they would more or less absorb the Mountain West just to keep the Pac-12 namesake.
Yeah.
Or the Pac namesake and whatever number they want to throw behind it. Because, you're going to keep that name versus Mountain West. But, I find it funny, these schools that were wanting these new media deals when all that talk was going up, and they didn't want to accept their first initial offers. And then ESPN was like, all right, we're out. And now look at it. It's, you've now almost dissolved your entire conference.
I had to laugh when they announced the ACC was going to be on, I think, CW channel or something like
that. I joked about that too, and somebody kind of took a shot at me for it, like, oh, well, I think of the CW and I think of teenage dramas.
I think of Wayne's Brothers, Steve Harvey's show,
yeah.
Dawson's Creek. I was like, I said something like, Clemson Duke's going to be run on after Dawson's Creek. I mean, that's what you think, and I see where they're going, trying to, but again, what is it? The Big Ten's going to Peacock, and you have to get that streaming service. I think they're going to start going to Peacock on just streaming only. So, I'm waiting to see how some of that affects, because I'm telling you, they start screwing around with that stuff and not having a solidified. You're not like ESPN where you can stream and watch on a TV. Big Ten needs to be careful when they go down this just streaming option, because that could hurt you in the grand scheme of, look at the Pac-12, and you can't say that the time frame and Pac-12 after dark and some of these games going on at 11 o'clock at night didn't have an effect on just the popularity, other than like USC, and when Stanford had luck, there was some teams, Oregon, they had their days, but you didn't have hey, I want to stay up and watch the Stanford-Washington game at 11 o'clock at night. You didn't want to do that because but they tried going to, I remember, what was a couple years ago, they tried to do like a 9 a.m., 10 a.m. kickoff or something.
Yeah.
They were just trying, and you've seen the when your tire blows out, just the shreds starting to come off. And I think when they started getting away from their MO, you've seen that they were trying to grab at straws to try to do something different to get more viewers, but it was just, you can't ask these kids to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and play at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock game just to be on TV. I mean, it's just, to me, it's not safe enough, because these guys, hey, let's get up 6 o'clock in the morning and let's go jump on this field at 8 and knock heads around.
Yeah. With the streaming services, I think it's a slippery slope, for games to go only that route. I mean, I've read some of the reports with the Pac-12 that they were also propositioned by Apple TV to show their games, Apple TV being a streaming only service, and they turned it down. But like with the Peacock, I think that the Notre Dame game this weekend, it was on Peacock at game time, but I have some buddies that have YouTube TV, and it wasn't showing that Notre Dame game till a few hours later.
Oh, wow.
So you're looking at, you're now getting Peacock that held the rights because of NBC to have that game on live, and then everybody else could watch it later. And see, stuff like that would bug me if I had YouTube TV, or if I was a fan of Notre Dame and didn't have Peacock. You're looking at, okay, well, then now I've got to figure out another way to watch it. And the number of streaming services subscriptions that most people have is just becoming ridiculous. But
if my father-in-law is watching, I apologize, because I'm about to razz him for a second. It was like watching football with him. First time we ever watched a football game together. He's a big Michigan State fan, and I went over there and watched the game. Well, he would pause it, go outside, have a drink, and have a smoke, and 10, 15 minutes later, come back in and watch the game. No problem. I was like, okay. But it was like that 3 or 4 times during the broadcast of this game. And it just drove me crazy, because it was like, we're 6 o'clock at night. We're still in the third quarter. It was a noon kickoff,
Yeah.
But I got to give him a little crap there for a second. But no, I mean, that's what it makes me think of. And I'm telling you, that would absolutely, fans would leave. I've seen, listen, when Dish Network cut off Channel 5 2 weeks before CBS and college football, I worked for the competitor DirecTV, and we had an influx of, we were 2 weeks out on a service call. There were so many people jumping ship coming to DirecTV because it's football season, and I know now they're starting to go through that with KNWA and some of the NBC stations now with, but that's one thing I want to get into is knowing the business that I've worked in the satellite business for 8 years. That's the thing that with the streaming stuff, it's going to be interesting. We've already seen it with YouTube TV. They already upped their price $30 when they acquired the NFL Sunday Ticket. They're at $39, $40 now. They're like $79, and you still have to pay extra for the NFL Sunday Ticket. What's Peacock going to be? I mean, what's going to happen when all these channels are $20, $25 a piece? Plus, if you have Hulu or a YouTube TV, now you're pushing $150, $160 just to watch your teams for a season. I mean, I think we're starting to see a little bit of it. It's not now, and I don't know if it ever will because streaming is just taking over, but I think that's what's going to be the thing that keeps the satellite business afloat because, not everybody's going to want to buy 6-7 different things to watch TV.
You're the whole thought or idea of cutting the cord is no longer a thing in my eyes. Just because you have now so many different streaming services. And I mean, I'm guilty of it. I mean, I've got Hulu, Peacock, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, which granted I get that in a package. I have DirecTV, Netflix, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just kind of like, I find reasons to keep them. I look at it like, okay, I watch this on this. I watch this on this. I still watch wrestling. So I get all my WWE pay-per-views on Peacock.
Yeah.
So, I justify it, but, it's getting to the point that we're going to get back to, just having cable or satellites, then going to be the cheaper option that they were trying to get us away from for so long. My only gripe lately with DirecTV has been, Fox has been off.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, for a little while now, but I just figure, right before NFL kicks off officially out of preseason that flip will be switched and that'll be solidified.
And that's a lot of it is greed because, I know, and this has nothing to do with YouTube or DirecTV or Dish. It's the people above them that hold these channels hostage and they know, all right, let's cut them off a month before football season. We know they're going to pay us. So they demand more money from the provider. The provider gives them more money. And then the customer is the one that in the end sucks, because now their bill goes up $10, $15, and that's all it is. Technology has changed. I know that, the 4K and stuff like that's changed, but to sit there and hold hostage when you're making billions and billions of dollars, it's almost like, man, just let us have our TV, let the customers, let people have whatever they want, and, again, everybody getting on these, well, I want my $5.99 instead of coming together and making money off the streaming service. Hey, let's all of, Discovery Plus, Disney Plus, A&E Plus, everybody wants their $5.99, and that's what's going to turn people away.
Yeah. And you'll start seeing, we already saw it with like HBO and Cinemax and all of them joining forces. And now you've got Max that's got the Discovery Plus, that's got Warner Brothers, that's got all of that. So, but they're still
done it too, because Paramount has MTV.
Yeah.
Is it Paramount?
Yeah. Paramount's owns MTV and VH1 and then has all their shows that they own with the Paramount Network. And yeah, so, it's a weird time for all of this. My biggest thing is when I've changed the password to one of them and I don't remember it or forgot that I did, and I have to do a forgot password and get a new link. It's just ongoing and gets annoying. But, kind of going back to like you were talking about when you're having to stop games, pause games. So, your father-in-law could go out and smoke, drink, whatever. I look at it like I'm not going to pause a game. I'm also not going to record a game to watch it later. because we live in such a instant gratification world that there's no way that I could record a game and just not find out anything about it to watch it later so that I don't have it spoiled for me.
Or not cheat yourself. You'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
what's the score?
So if I'm going somewhere, if I've got something going on, I'm finding a way, whether it's having it on in the background on my phone or whatever. It's like I'm going to have the game or I'm going to have the radio broadcast on somewhere, because it's just like, what, I can deal with not getting to watch it, be there, or watch it on TV directly. So I'll just deal with watching it through my phone or listening to it on the radio.
So back to, Saturday's game, what is your, if you could give, like say score prediction and does Rocket go over 100 yards rushing? Something along the lines of that. What do you think how this game goes? And we'll go halftime score. We know, again, unless something just craziness happens, we know Arkansas is going to pretty much win this game handily, but what are you expecting out of this game as the result?
I'm looking at, say, Rocket to finish around the 75-yard mark, that being him not playing in the second half. So I'm looking at him, unless he just happens to break off an 80-yard run. I look at, he's going to have a couple bursts, but I don't see him playing much, if at all, in the second half. So I'm going to stay right around that 75-yard mark for him. Halftime score, I would probably think around a 35-7.
Yeah.
I would like to go for more, just to have that separation so you don't feel like you have to play guys in the third quarter or much of the third quarter. But I think 35-7 is reasonable.
I'm going to go 45-10, 45-17, something like that. Final score. I'm actually going to say, with Rocket, I think he's going to have a big run. So I'm going to push the over, maybe 110, 120, just adding that extra big run in. And I'm really excited to see, because our big question coming in the season is that drop off, between KJ and Malik. I'm really ready to see, and I hope that it's that far ahead that Jacoby gets to come in and get some of their ones, some of their starters, and get some rhythm going to see how he does against a legit one defense. And again, next week against Kent State, because there's going to be times where they're going to use him in some sets during a game. And especially with his arm strength, good Lord. 60 yards into the wind. If you need like just a third and long, or just, you want to come in and just say KJ needs a break. He's carried the ball 5 times on a drive and throw the ball, and say Arkansas gets a quick turnover. It'd be nice to put him right in just to give KJ, especially in games like this. Say KJ just has a drive where he carries the ball 3-4 times. Then, say they get a quick touchdown, and, he's a little not tired, but he's starting to get a little gassed. Be able to bring Jacoby in and kind of give him a little bit of break. Maybe if it's in the later the second quarter, but I think that'd be interesting too.
Yeah. I'd like to see him earlier by choice than a forced decision, whether it be injury or whatever, knock on wood. But, with Jacoby, I kind of look at, I had questions coming in or when he transferred in, but just from what I've heard and seen practice, coaches, everything, he seems to have a little bit more of a head on his shoulders, and it's not knocking Malik by any means. It's just he seems to understand his role, his position. His arm strength is crazy. He seems to be accurate, and I think that was one of Malik's biggest downsides, is he was in his head too much. Mm-hmm. His accuracy was off. It showed quickly. He just immediately he catches the ball and he's looking to run, which tells me you don't trust yourself.
Yeah. Well, and you had the pressure of I've got to immediately come in and do well. If I come in and struggle, if I come in and don't have a good half or a good drive, in your head, you're talking about getting in your head. Mm-hmm. You got Jacoby. He got to sit behind one of the best quarterbacks in the country and really learn. And of course, having Mac Brown there, you know, having a coach to sit there and help you out. And you could see the difference. And this is, you know, I'm not talking anything bad about, you know, the coaching staff or, you know, Malik himself, but you could tell the difference between what he had out there at North Carolina, even if he didn't get to play much, just his composure. And plus, he's coming back to his home state. You know, he wants to ball out in front of his home fans and really get a chance. And that, I mean, Morrilton is not too far away from Little Rock. I mean, that's going to be really cool for him to come in, be able to come in Saturday and play in front of his home crowd, because it's easier to get to Little Rock from Morrilton than it is Fayetteville. So, I mean, just those little intangibles. I love an underdog story, and I really want Armstrong and Tesla to break out this year, because I love the fact that when people doubt you because you come from a smaller school and then you blow up. I mean, that's what I love about college sports. That's what I love about people who have that dog in them. They want to prove people wrong.
Oh yeah, I'm ready for it. You know, it's one of those things that it's time for the guys to just put everything that they've been working on, that we've been talking about, out there for us to see. So it's like, you know what, there's no more questions. There's no more whatever. It's here we are. This is what we're going to do.
That's right. Well, unless you got anything else, we'll wrap it up for tonight's show. We do have a big show tomorrow night. We're going to have Brandon Marcello of 247 Sports come on and talk about the Razorbacks off season and break down, you know, his reasonings why, you know, I think we might have touched on a little bit about, you know, them not breaking in his top 30. But tomorrow night at 7, we'll be live with that. Again, we're brought to you by Bet Online, part of the Believe Podcast Network, and we will catch you tomorrow night.
Have a good night.